flames nor the depths could claim me.
How's it going, everyone? I'm Solarbacca bringing you guys today a different type of video. This time we are going to be talking about Gangplank. But this time, what a surprise, by the way, we're talking about Gangplank. This time we are talking about his runes and builds. So, as always, if you guys do enjoy these types of special videos or enjoy the videos in general, please be sure to leave a like, comment down below what you want to see next, subscribe, and before we get into the runes and builds, let's show you what happens if you have the right runes and you have the right build and you have the right mindset. We're in a 22-minute game, and as many of you have seen, this is the Tyler 1 clip of him getting, well, deleted, but for those of you who haven't seen it, this is what the power of GP can do.
What? This shitty game!
Okay, so first rune that we're going to go over is Grasp. Now, Grasp does 60% less of what it used to, but it's still useful and viable into a lot of matchups. These matchups include Cho'Gath, Aurelia, Poppy, Fiora, what else is there? Rengar. Pretty much most top lane matchups you can actually still take Grasp into and not have too big of a problem in laning phase. So I do think it's still viable, but I don't think it's the best rune anymore. So if you wanted to know what the Grasp setup would look like, it would probably look something like this. And if you're against a tank, maybe you go Overgrowth instead. And if you're against something like a Riven, you'd run Bone Plating. Secondary runes, I always run Futures Market and Time Warp Tonic, but if you were against maybe a tank, you could run Magical Footwear and Futures Market as well, or even Stopwatch. Next rune, let's do Inspiration. This is the setup that I ran in the Tyler 1 video, and that I am running on pretty much all of my accounts, mostly. Even on this account, which is 73% win rate Masters, so we're chilling on that one. Another one, just unsealed spellbook pretty much almost every single game. So this is the setup that I run. Unsealed spellbook because we're not really looking to fight in laning phase, and let me clarify that this is for mid lane, not so much as top lane unless you're against something like a Poppy or a Shed. Glacial Augment doesn't really give you anything versus like a mage or versus an assassin. You're not actually going to change the outcome of laning phase. Same with Omni Stone, so you'd rather have the rune of Unsealed Spellbook to either Ghost to lane, Ignite to get a kill, Clarity if you're running low on mana and don't have TP up, things of that nature. Unsealed Spellbook is just the best thing to have. Next up, we come to this tree, and Magical Footwear will always be best because you don't want to be spending gold on boots when you could easily have 300 gold, which is literally a kill, for free. And you also get more movement speed from Magical Footwear than if you were to purchase boots. Next, this is where it gets different. So, contrary to what most people might think, I don't take Futures Market. I take Minion Dematerializer in the mid lane. And the reason for this is because at level 7, if you have a tier, which is what the build is that I will show you guys in a second, if you guys have a tier or a D-Blade or a Cole, in addition to a Sheen and a Longsword, from level 7 onwards, you will always one-shot the back wave, even if you're really behind. So I use all three on the caster minions, and that pretty much allows me to get my Silver Serpent faster and also get Prio. Like if I'm against something like an Anivia, it takes one barrel and I kill the entire back wave, and then the front wave is another barrel that I can queue, and suddenly I got all 6 minions with plus 7 gold. You know, it's insane. By probably the 20-minute mark, you'll notice that you have about 1k farmed with your queue. That's 3 kills that you get for free just from having this one rune early game that snowballs you into getting your items earlier as well. And your ult upgrades. So you can have 3 ult upgrades. I believe on average when I take this rune, I have 3 ult upgrades by 22 or 23? Yeah, 23, 24. Anywhere from 22 to 24 minutes. Alright, next up we have Cosmic Insight. So honestly, if you wanted to go Corrupting Pot and maybe trade a little bit in lane, you can take Time Warp, but there's really no point because your Qs literally do no damage, and with this setup you're looking to just scale. So I would just take Cosmic Insight, having that TP up faster, having that flash up faster, and yeah, just overall the best rune out of these 3. Now secondary, I do this every single time. We either run Mana Flow Gathering Storm, or run Absolute Focus Gathering Storm. I don't take any other rune that changes besides Gathering Storm, and these two runes are interchangeable, but I probably recommend only taking one of these two. Now, Absolute Focus you can take if you feel that you're going to fall behind early and you need to build resistance in your matchup, like maybe a cloth armor, then that's okay. That longsword can be replaced by Absolute Focus to one-shot the back wave. So there's no real issue there. If you wanted to build the cloth instead of that longsword, you'd still be able to one-shot using Absolute Focus. But for sure, you're always going to need Gathering Storm. This is your bread and butter. It's going to outscale everything, every rune by 20 minutes. So it's very, 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 very strong. Next, you have Mana Flow if you're against the melee matchup or a matchup that you can abuse early. I'm thinking of a good example. Let's see. Oh, Katarina was one. If Katarina ever wants to walk up, you easily get a Q of Mana Flow stack on her. Yasuo is another good example of that matchup, even mid lane Aurelia, so I would probably take Mana Flow into those matchups because it also, not only does it give me sustain along with my tier, which means infinite oranges, it also adds on to my my Mura mana damage, because Mura mana is based off of how much mana you have, so this is an extra 250, so this is actually converted into damage later on. So Mana Flow into those matchups where you can spam Q, and otherwise you take Absolute Focus if you want to build resistances, or if you just can't get Mana Flow stacks. And with this setup as well, I love these two runes because if you get even one Infernal Dragon, it's actually, it does make a difference. It does make a difference. You get two Infernal Dragons, it makes an even bigger difference. So I just love these runes for the scaling that they give. You can literally have 40 AD from your runes by like the 30-minute mark. Yeah, you can have 40 AD, which is a free BF sword. That's 1,300 gold that you don't need to spend, and that's added onto your damage. So, this is my main setup. I run Unsealed Spellbook. Alright, now let's talk about the next setup. Now, let me address something before I get into Aery, which is what I usually take for either top lane or if I really want to fight mid lane. I don't like Comet. I've tried it multiple times. I've tried it with Barrel Start. I've tried it with Q Start. I can't get into it. I don't think it's a rune worth taking. If you want to take it for fun, that's fine. But if you're trying to win, I recommend staying away from Comet and going for more consistent damage like Aery. So for my Aery setup, if I'm against something AP, I can run Nullifying Orb, and there's no problem with that because I'm playing for mostly lane. Transcendence always, I would say. Absolute Focus won't give you much because you have to be above 70% health, and if you're interacting with the enemy laner, you're probably not going to be above 70 health all the time. So Transcendence, and you can take Scorch if you're against something like a Teemo. Like if I was against a Teemo, this would be my setup. But if I was just playing a scale and I was against like maybe a tank, I'd go Gathering Storm. If I was against a tank, I'd replace Nullifying for Mana Flow. So these two are interchangeable depending on your matchup and preference, and these two are also interchangeable depending on matchup and preference. Secondary, you can take a lot of different runes, honestly. If you're running the Essence of your build, you could run something maybe Cut Down versus tanks, along with Triumph for Presence of Mind if you just want to continue the mana. Probably not Presence of Mind though, probably just Triumph, honestly. And you could run a setup like this where Cut Down is mostly your damage. The other thing you could do is Domination, where you could run Omnivamp along with Taste of Blood. I think if you're running Aery, you should always be running Taste of Blood because it's really broken when you spam Q all the time. Getting like 30 health back, 20 health back level 1 is really, really insane. Or you can take Ultimate Hunter as well. But for sure, it's between Ultimate or Ravenous. You could also take Resolve with this setup if you're looking to sustain a little bit in lane, like if you're against maybe like a Camille or something, you want to poke back with Aery, but you don't want to take Grasp. Because Grasp ultimately is Aery, but with worse scaling. And Aery is obviously Grasp, but with better scaling now. So, Second Wind and Revitalize is probably what I take most of the time. Interchangeable between Bone Plating and Revitalize if you really want, or if you want Demolish and Bone Plating, you definitely can do that as well. Nice. Next rune is, or next secondary tree is Inspiration. You could also run Inspiration, and you could run something like this. This is a pretty aggressive laning phase with Time Warp Tonic to space. And also heal up, make up for your lack of health early on. And Futures Market is just generally a good rune to have because it gets you to your Sheen earlier, especially now that Gangplank's laning phase is a little bit more difficult to pull off. And yeah, those are all the subtree runes I would run for Aery. Next, let's talk about Dark Harvest. So, with Dark Harvest, what you can run is Dark Harvest, Taste of Blood, or Cheap Shot. I would probably prefer Taste of Blood because, again, that health on your Q is really OP. eyeball collection, and I usually take Relentless Hunter because I don't like having little movement speed, but honestly that's just like I feel like that's like a one trick or like a me type of thing. I feel like the best runes are always going to be Ultimate and Ravenous Hunter because they're just so useful, especially Ultimate Hunter. So that's what I would probably run. Secondary, you could run these runes as well, Time Warp and Futures Market, because you're playing to scale with your Dark Harvest, but you also want to have a pretty manageable laning phase. So Futures Market is just always broken, as you can see. I love to take it with pretty much everything. And yeah, you could also take Resolve if you really wanted to, like Bone Plating and Revitalize if you're against like a Wukong, a Riven, things of that nature. But ultimately, the best runes that were for Unsealed Spellbook, I think, are the best runes for Dark Harvest as well, which is scaling. So to take this setup, I would recommend you always be mid lane. Top lane, you maybe can get away with it if you're against like a maybe like a Silas top, then it's not that hard to proc it. But otherwise, it's hard to see yourself proccing it in something like an Ornn very often. So I wouldn't recommend taking it top lane too often. It's more so for mid lane. Don't know if I said it, but Aery can be taken mid lane or mostly top lane. Probably mostly top lane, but you can also take it into some mid matchups. Lastly, we have Fleet Footwork. So this rune I think is probably the most sustainable, honestly, between all the other runes that I went through. For top lane, I do believe that Fleet is probably going to be the best rune for top lane. So this is the setup that I would run: Fleet, Presence of Mind, interchangeable between Triumph or Overheal, but I'd probably just go with Triumph, honestly. And or actually I'd probably go with Presence of Mind depending on the lane, but if I'm against the tank, both of these are actually good. It's really a matter of preference, I'd say. Now, what you can differ here is Tenacity or Alacrity. Personally, if you're going to Essence Reaver build, I would always go for attack speed, because with 5 barrels, having attack speed means so much. It's actually insane what a difference it makes once you actually get attack speed. No one can outtime you, and you can keep them in the chain of slows. So I personally would go Alacrity, but you can go Tenacity if you're going for a more bruisery type of build and you just don't want to be CC'd overall. If you're going the Essence Reaver build, always go cut down, because everyone will always have more health than you. Otherwise, you should go Last Stand if you're going like a bruisery type of build with either Hydra, or if you're going like Trio Musterex, which I'll get into. Secondary, you can run Taste of Blood, Ultimate Hunter. Again, Taste of Blood is really broken, as you can see. And Ultimate Hunter, Ravenous Hunter are always going to be the best runes to have for the Domination tree. And right away, I realized I forgot to mention this in Fleet, but Fleet Footwork, once you hit around level 5, level 6, level 7, your Q starts healing you for about 50 health a Q on the enemy champion, which isn't hard to get because of your passive. You can easily kite towards the enemy. When I say kite towards the enemy, I mean hit a minion with your passive and walk up towards the enemy, land a Q, and you get like 50 health back. Or you can wait for them to walk up towards a minion, and when they go for a CS, that's when you Q them and you get that health back. So, Fleet Footwork is a very good rune for sustaining. I wouldn't recommend taking it versus tanks though, because besides, yeah, I wouldn't recommend taking it besides like, don't take it into tanks, is my opinion, because if a tank builds Bramble, this is halved by a lot. This is, instead of healing like 60 health from a Q, you'll heal like 30, like 38 or something. Like 35, and I think that's still, like, it's still manageable. It just feels like shit when you see the huge difference in the heal. And Bramble Vest is only 800 gold, so any tank could really pick it up. I guess this would be more like a Fiora lane if I were to put a matchup on it. This is probably what I take into a Fiora lane. Second one, Revitalize, synergize extremely well, and you could also take Domination, like I said, to be a little bit more aggressive, but also have some scaling for your team. Or Sorcery, you could probably take Mana Flow Gathering, and I could see this being a very good scaling setup, very nice. Or you could take Inspiration with Futures and Time Warp, but the only reason why I think these runes don't really make sense that much, unless you did something like this, is because playing for laning is a little bit difficult when you have Fleet Footwork. Because it means that you're not really being aggressive, you're kind of just sitting back, farming, and getting Qs here and there to restore your health, but never anything beyond that. And yeah, I think that's about it. So there's one keystone for every single tree on the new Gangplank. Of those, I will probably be using unsealed as #1 priority. And for top lane, I will be running Fleet and Aery or Grasp, depending on the matchup. If it's a Camille, I'll probably run Grasp. If it's like a Yasuo top lane, I'll run Aery for sure. I'm thinking of another matchup. If it's like a Shen top lane, I'll either run Aery or unsealed spellbook. If it's like a Poppy, I'll probably run Grasp, because I like having second wind and revitalize. So, or I could run Aery with resolve secondary. So these runes are all pretty good, honestly. Dark Harvest is mostly for mid lane, obviously, as I explained. Fleet is mostly for top lane. Grasp is mostly for top lane, and Unsealed is mostly for mid lane, but can be taken into some top lane matchups. Now let's go to builds. Let's talk about builds. Where is it? I made an item set. Okay, so the build that you see in this video where Tyler 1 gets absolutely deleted and destroyed 1300 at 22 minutes with only 3 items, and where Moondaddy is Biofrost, well, he pretty much almost dies before he starts screaming. So the setup that I run is I start tier because, again, I'm not playing really aggressive. I'm not playing for D-Blade or any single item of that nature, not Corrupting Pot. I just run tier. And what I end up doing is I end up going for a cheater recall if possible on the 3rd wave. Or if not, we're pretty much like bouncing waves until we get to around the 4th wave, is when I should have 450 gold plus maybe a pot if I'm able to, but otherwise I recall on the 5th wave, and then I TP back with coal refillable and a control ward, and that's pretty much setting me up for the mid game. Coal will help me complete the item. The tier is going to be stacked up very early and work into my Muramana, which procs on my ulti, barrels, Q, everything, and also gets multiply. I think it has a multiplier in it. I'm not too sure if they hot fixed it for the crit damage along with Muramana, but anyways. We rush the Essence Reaver. Level 7, I do one-shot the back wave with the Unsealed Spellbook setup. So you're going to have Essence Reaver by 10 minutes every single game. Muramana, I go second, only if the tier is around 280, 300 mana. If it's anything like below 280, 300 mana, I don't complete Muramana. I just go for completing my Prowler's Claw. And you might be saying, why Prowler's Claw? Because of the damage you get. The damage you get from this is absolutely insane. Having 5 lethality an item along with having your base armor penetration plus the Lord Dominix you're going to build later on is just an insane combo. It makes you so strong. And right off the bat, by the way, after you get Essence and Muramana, you're already hitting for 1k a crit. With Prowlers, you're probably hitting for 1.2. Actually, as you can see in this clip, 1.3, because I don't think we had any dragons. Yeah, we don't have a single Infernal, I saw it. It was, I believe, Cloud, Ocean, and Mountain. And that guy still got 1 shot. So, pretty OP 3 items. Usually around this 3 item mark, you're also level 13, so you're able to carry. And if you're running the Unsealed Spellbook setup, I usually have all 3 items by 17 to 19 minutes. Or 17 to 20 minutes. 17 being the average, 20 being if I'm performing poorly. Next, we have Lord Dominix. At this point, everyone's base armor will be high enough to the point where Lord Dominix is good, along with the 15% bonus health damage is also really nice, considering you have 0 health in this build, and most people will be building health of some sort. So it's very, very, very nice build that synergizes together. And lastly, you go for an Infinity Edge for that crit multiplier, and although it's late in the build and you're only playing with exactly 60% crit, if you do crit, your barrels will hit for 2k plus damage. I believe it's 2.4, anywhere from 2.3 to 2.6, an absurd amount of damage. And that's like that's not just like a flat amount. Like, even if they have a lot of armor, they will get hit like a freaking truck. There is no surviving. Next, after you sell your boots, you can buy Collector. And Collector is nice to have. It gives you a little lethality later on in the game, but the crit chance, some AD. It's also interchangeable with the Mortal Reminder. I probably should include that. Like, if you really want the movement speed, it's interchangeable with something like a Mortal Reminder, especially if you're running Dark Harvest and you have Relentless Hunter. This Mortal Reminder will put you back up to as if you had boots. And yeah, that's it for that. You could replace Muramana with Serpent's Fang, or collector. If you really don't want to have that scaling mid game and you want to scale like right now, then you can do that. Also, if you fall behind or you realize that the enemy team has a lot of shields and you're the only person who can build shield break, you should definitely not go man immune right away, or Prowler's Claw. Maybe skip Prowler's Claw and just buy the Serpent's Fang. Now, this is a possible build for the fastest 60% crit. Like, it gives you no haste, but I think because of that reason it'll probably be built in pro play because it's harder. It's the hardest spiking one. Is everything good here? Okay, everything's good here. I accidentally moved the thing, my bad. But yeah, this is probably going to be the hardest early spiking one because you get the multipliers, you get the sustain, you get the lifesteal, and you get to survive with the shield that you get with this build. I personally am not a fan of it. For me using it, I feel like there's no value for me as a Gangplank player in this build. I'd prefer to go for a build like above and carry the game. But this is also a viable build, and if you're like a collegiate, amateur, pro player, whatever you are, this is probably what you're going to be building mostly. And I have another build over here that you will probably like more than this one, but we'll get into that into a second. So, crit build for top. So for carrying into the mid or late game, I run Trinity Force. Youmuu's just got buffed, rebuffed compared to how it was before, and Youmuu's has always been a great item on Gangplank, like a great item. I personally am a fan of it. You get so much movement speed. It makes up for the movement speed that you don't have anymore from Trinity Force, like old Trinity Force gave you, and it just feels great. A great power spike for damage, and you get haste, and you have so much movement speed, and you have the ghost, where you literally just don't get body blocked by anything. It feels great for landing barrels. Next, we have Mortal Reminder to build into crit. It's pretty cheap. There's a lot of executioners in every single game. You get a ton of movement speed between this and Youmuu's. You get like 445 or 450 base movement speed, and that is pretty disgusting. And you get attack speed, which is great for barrels. As I mentioned before, the attack speed that you get is huge for barrels. Because honestly, I look at the AD, and although it's low, I think to myself as well, like, if I have a lot of attack damage, right, and I'm, like, not that good at Gangplank, what good does 1000 AD do for me if I can't land a single damn barrel? But with this build, there's a lot of backup, I'd say. You have movement speed, you have ways to get out, you have health, you have attack speed to land barrels, and this just kind of adds on to that, yeah, I can land barrels much easier, and this pivots into my next crit item. LDR, because everyone's base armor is high at this game, or has some form of armor, Zonia's, Bramble, any sort of armor, Tabby's, like, there's a lot of things. LDR is just always a good item to have. Also, versus tanks, it also helps, but you already have 200 health from your Trinity Force, so still always the best item. Lastly, the Infinity Edge for that 60% that you have, for that multiplier. And yeah, that wraps up this build for if you wanted to build a crit top to carry mid or late game. Now, if you're snowballing games, I have a different build. This is the build that I will run every single top lane game that I'm snowballing. Trinity, Youmuu's, Serpents, or Umbral, depending on if they have shields or not. No shields equals Umbral, shields equals Serpents. Umbral is necessary for me to clear wards and roam, because nobody expects the GP to be roaming or around certain places on the map. But then he shows up and you get destroyed because he already has Trinity, Youmuu's, and he's snowballing super hard. So that's probably the setup that I would take. Honestly, this is the setup that I would take because you destroy towers, you get so much value from 2 or 3 items. I believe your barrels hit for 710 damage. 710 damage-ish, which is really huge considering that that's consistent damage. You're not relying on an RNG crit. After that, Edge of Night, and then you can get Cerelia's Grudge if you can get Cerelia's Grudge, or you can get Lord Dominic's. I'd probably go for Lord Dominic's, but Cerelia's Grudge does give you the 20 haste, which some people might find valuable, and it gives you 15 more AD. And lastly, this is the build where if you're a pro, if you're academy, amateur, anything of that nature, this will probably feel like the best Gangplank build there is to you. You see the essence, you see a shield, but you think, I have no movement speed, this kind of sucks a little bit, my laning phase is a little piss. This is your build. Trinity, Youmuu's, Sterax. Now you can build Youmuu's as a third item, like how people used to do in pro play, However, I think you should just build it second item, personally. I personally think you should just build it second item, then pivot into Starax or Death Stance, probably Starax, and then you get a Death Stance after, something of that nature. And Azonias. Now, stop building GA on GP. It does nothing. By the time you're fully dead as Gangplank, 800 health, and you respawn, you're not making a difference in the fight. With Zonias, you actually bait out cooldowns and you prevent from being bursted in the first place. And the thing with Zonias and Gangplank is there's never a time where you can't use Zonias. Like, GA will always be procced. Like, if you use one orange to dodge one CC, that's it, right? But the thing is, right after you orange, you are able to Zonias no matter what. Even if you are caught out off guard or something, if you have a teammate near and you orange and you just instantly Zonias, you will never die. You just won't. That's 2.5 seconds of invulnerability right there, and you could set up your next flash. You know? With GA, that's not the story. GA, you probably used your flash to avoid dying in the first place, but you still die. With GA, if you get caught out, you're just dead no matter what. But Zonias, I feel, is a shorter cooldown. You have AP on your orange, your ulti. You get the same, if not more armor, right? I think Guardian gives you 30. Guardian gives you 40, this gives you 45. But, yeah, it's just a way better item than GA will ever be on Gangplank. So this is probably the build that you're going to be going. You probably have defensive boots. I think it's a very, very, very strong build. After Starax, what you could also build, I think this is going to be your 4-item spike. If you really wanted, you could build even like Anathema chains. I'm not too sure if you need more damage because you're going to have 5 barrels. So if I were to build Anathema chains, it'd probably be after Starax. And this would probably be looking something like my full build. You get a lot of haste, right? You get 20 from Anathema, you get 10 from Zonias, you get 15 from this, and you get 20 from this. And if you run CDR boots, you're sitting at like 95 haste. It's very disgusting. So this is what you can build in solo queue as well, for those of you wondering. But I'm sure most of you who are watching this video are watching this for the one shot and for the carry potential, and not really looking at this. So for all of you pro players, all of you amateur academy, this is your build, and you should try it. And if you want, you can hit me up on Discord, or you can come into my stream and you can tell me how it is, because honestly, to me, this is the build that will probably make you feel the best. But yeah, that about wraps it up for builds and runes. I hope you guys did enjoy the video. So as always, if you guys did enjoy it, be sure to leave a like, comment down below what you want to see next, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.